returning.
Back again.
Yeah.
Stoked.
I'm not sure what the Return of the Dads means, but
I was getting ready to ask you that. I just noticed it, and I was like, did you name the episode?
No, I didn't. Your brother did, and he was like, I think this is funny. And I was like, I don't get it, but okay.
Oh, I was going to say, are you letting your mom know now, like low-key, finally?
Yeah, no. Mom, Chase, and I are in a relationship. It's been going for about 5 years, and Andre was actually the beard of my beard. So here we are.
The beard of my beard. I'll make sure to let Abby know. I'm sure she'll be thrilled.
It's all right. It'll be good. You know what, guys? I know everybody else cares about this. I can't get the tint correct on the lighting for tonight's show, so I'm just going to look pale, which is fine, I guess.
I'm pretty sure that's what I did for, like, the first 50 episodes. Was just look like a vampire who was sick.
Right? I don't know what's going... Like, so I had everything perfect, and then I used my podcast light as, like, a spotlight for another project I was doing, and I can't get the settings back perfect, apparently, to the way they were before. So I'm not frustrated. Y'all are frustrated. It's fine.
I mean, I'm sure everyone's going to complain. But,
yeah.
You know, Patrick just doesn't have that normal glow to him tonight. What's going on?
That's what it is. I also...
It's the aura.
Yeah, it's the aura. Somebody was writing a bio up about me. More to that to come.
Oh, I was going to say...
more on that later. But in the bio, it was like, you know, founded Aura in 2017. And I just didn't have the energy to tell them. It's actually Mac Knight Stables, and it was before that. But you know what? We're going to roll with this and just go with it. It's fine.
I was going to say 2017. Who wrote this?
Yeah, they were mixing and matching some different things. So, yeah, it was interesting. And I was like, all right, well, whatever. We're just going to roll with it. It's fine. So Aura was founded in 2017, guys. Ignore the fact that we had a conversation about a year ago saying that Aura was being founded.
I was going to say, I've got McKnight Stable stickers that say otherwise, whoever's doing that. What is up, everybody? It's good to see 319, Dickie, Charlie, yes, Shauna, Chris. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, guys.
Ashley, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I found a roll of like the old Mac Knight Stables stickers, and I need to start just handing them out with snakes as I sell them, you know?
Well, I sent you that picture when I was cleaning my old snake stuff out, and I've still got like a partial roll of like 6 or 7 of them.
That's hilarious. I love that. I need to start doing that again. We stopped for a little bit. I need to start just getting stickers from people to just include in our packages. Like, I think it's just fun to like get a bundle of stickers. I mean, I know some people get worried about competitions. I don't care. Whatever. Like, so
it's fun to just pass it on, just like other people's fun logos and designs.
It is, right? So if y'all have stickers and you just want to send them to me, I'll include them in my packages. So just message me on Instagram. I'll get you all my shipping information. And if y'all want
load this guy up,
load me up. I mean, and it's entertaining. Every now and then, like for a little while there, I'd have packages where like 40 stickers were being shipped. It was absurd. I got one person, they sent me they opened the box, they sent it to me, they're like, are you serious? I'm like, I share.
I haven't gotten a sticker mule order in a while because we ordered so big a bulk. I'm out of hot sauce, so I actually need to make a sticker mule order just to get some of their hot sauce in the box.
I'm glad you said something. I need to see.
It's good. It's genuinely good hot sauce.
Their hot sauce actually is decent. So I started making coasters for the shows, right, that I put on all of the tables that people really, really love, I'm sure, at Tinley. Yeah, Canova really loves it when there's a shit ton of Aura coasters on tables. Justin really was a big fan.
We have Aura lanyards on.
As you're wearing Aura lanyards, Justin's over here like, why? Speaking of which, lanyards came in this week. Super excited about that.
Thank goodness. I was worried.
Yeah, they're here. 500 of them, guys. So we got a lot to get rid of this time.
That feels like not very many for Tinley, honestly. Not to cut you off, but
no, that's fair. I normally do 250, and I get through all of them. So this time I was like, you know what? We're gonna go in. So we'll see. Yeah, who knows? So I bought coasters. And when they came in, they were like the worst quality I've ever seen.
Well,
I don't know what I'm going to do now.
Like coasters?
I mean, they're not wood. They're
no, but I'm saying
like coaster, but they're dirt. Like they look dirty almost. Actually, Vamp for a second. I'll show everybody. Vamp. Keep talking.
Yeah, because I was talking already, so I'll continue the rant.
Keep going.
All right, guys, what's the over-under how many clutches Patrick's having this year? Like, what number is he saying he's going to give? What's he going to get slug-wise? That's always what I'm giving a hard time about. I did have a cool clutch today, though. A het, so quad het, Sunset Hypo DG Clown, bred by the Hypo DG Sunset Clown, or Hypo D Spot Nose Hypo DG Sunset Het Clown. So we'll see.
All right. Let's see. I don't know if you can.
I asked people for over under on how many slugs you're getting this year.
That's rude. You can't see how bad they are. It's unfortunate. Anyway,
they're not your green.
No, it's
okay. Aura's my eye, or it's my eyes, not aura's my eyes.
Aura. No. So here's the deal. They're purple. Because they're spooky ghost.
Oh.
It'll be fine. Anyway, so I haven't decided if I'm gonna put them out or not this year. We'll see. Who knows? I
like the spooky theme though, since it's in October. That's very nice. That's a nice touch.
Thank you. I like the spooky theme too. They look cheap, and as a boutique business who strives on quality, I like to make everything look nice. But we'll see how this goes.
I love it. You know, for our Halloween episode, we should ask everyone to carve a pumpkin and submit their pictures, and then we can see who's made the best pumpkin for the year.
Guys, yeah, let's
just to keep the theme for because we both like Halloween.
That could be funny. Give me 26 of your lanterns. I'll give them to people if they subscribe.
My lord, you know she will too, though. Actually, she's gonna walk down the whole Tinley line.
I can get that taken care of. You come by the booth and we'll load you up with some lanyards.
Half of the crowd for Tinley is going to be wearing Aura lanyards now.
Yeah, dude, I hope so. They're going to ruin them before they get home anyway. No, you're right. No. We gave out temporary tattoos one year, and parents were getting mad at us for that. That was nuts. Molly came back, and she's like, Patrick, I can't give out any more tattoos. I'm like, it's kind of your job. And she's like, no, I physically can't. I'm like, why? She's like, parents are yelling at me. I was like, first off, sounds like a you problem. Second off, what?
That's right. It was that was like Molly's first Tinley, right?
Yeah, that was her first Tinley. Yeah, she got
not her first, but her first as
a snake employee.
Yes,
that was a fun moment because I felt like she didn't know if she worked for Justin or me. It was a lot of foreshadowing, if we're going to but. Yeah, that was good. That was a fun time. But yeah, the parents were so mad at us giving their children tattoos. I'm like, okay. I mean, you can just tell your kid no, it's okay. Like,
yeah, I was gonna say, why is that not an option? Why? It's not like Molly was forcing them to take them.
Maybe she was.
I was gonna say, how dedicated of an employee was Molly?
Well, I mean,
Yeah. That's why I'm asking. Hey, can you give me some tips?
No, I can't really. I thought money would motivate her, and it definitely motivated her to at least move to a new position. But it is what it is. It's okay.
She's slacking.
I've gotten over it. I've moved on emotionally and spiritually.
I'm trying to get her to move to Georgia full time.
Buddy, I'm gonna go ahead and just tell you that's not happening.
I'm working on it nonetheless.
Yeah. I like your optimism. I do. I like it. I think there's a better chance of her coming back to work for me before she moves to Georgia. And there's little to
never know
for us. So, that's so good. Oh, it's magical. All right. So, best and worst of the week, man. What you got going on?
Good clutches this week. It's probably the best of the week, honestly. Man, I'm trying to think of a worst of the week. Like, also best of the week. I had just a nice date night tonight. It was
oh, that's
fantastic.
So sweet. You still love your
yes,
pregnant wife.
I know. Honestly, the worst of the week is like baseball season's over for us. Like the Braves aren't in the playoffs. AAA's over. I'm in my seasonal depression.
Okay. All right.
What about you?
I love that that's your worst.
That should be
All
a
right.
good thing. Like,
No,
but that's my worst.
yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Let's see. Best of the week. Some really cool business stuff has been happening. I can't get into it, but I'm really excited about some opportunities that have come up and some things that we're working on. A lot of this stuff's going to get announced at Tinley, but it's really exciting. So it's kind of like that unspoken prayer request. It's like
Guys,
unspoken.
I'm gonna
It's the
go ahead and
best.
spoil it.
Yeah.
He's starting Retix. So
Oh my
he's getting
God,
out of ball
you-
pythons, and he's going to be a dedicated reticulated python breeder.
Yeah, guys. So here's the deal: the ball python market is trash, and it's
And
all
retics
been-
are on the rise. Clearly.
Yeah, retics are on the rise. It's all been just smoke and mirrors. Justin actually doesn't own any of those Porsches. He's leasing them 3 days at a time. Ozzy actually works at a medical supply company and has been stealing stuff. Ralph Davis, when he said he owned a Dodge Viper, he really meant a snake that kept dodging food. It was a whole thing. Okay, guys, the whole industry is on shambles. So, retics. I hear that's the next big thing, literally. And I can't think of a better way to make more money on an angry snake.
Bingo. There it is.
Yeah. So,
But in all seriousness, yeah, silent prayers, man.
But in all seriousness,
as much as I like to troll, but yes.
Yeah, no, there's some cool stuff coming. I cannot wait to share it with everybody. And if you're at Tinley, you're going to get to see it firsthand and talk about it and see what y'all think. So I'm really stoked about that. Worst of the week. Whew. Oh, you know what? My worst of the week actually was pretty shitty. I had a heat panel malfunction on the bottom level of one of my hatchling racks, and we lost five hatchlings. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was fucking terrible. I was
I am so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, that sucked. I was pretty bummed. Like, I went in and I was going through watering everything, and I opened up a tub and there was a dead snake, and not just it was like everything was bone dry in there. So all the other snakes, before it, they all had water. The bedding was a little bit damp as it normally, whatever, normal conditions. And then I open up the first tub, and it's just bone dry, like everything. The reptichip is dried out, the water is completely dry, and then the snake looks just shriveled and like something bad happened. I'm like, did I forget to water it? But even 1 week of not watering it, this wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And then I opened, and I was like, all right, whatever, and I'll deal with this. And so I get rid of it. And then I moved to the next tub, and it's the exact same thing. And every tub on that level was like that. And I was like, something's wrong. And so when I pulled the tub out, you kind of grab the back of the tub. It felt crazy hot to the touch. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Yeah, and you're just like, shit. It's just a shitty feeling.
I've made that such a second nature thing. Like, every time I pull a tub out, I always touch the bottom of it where the heat panel is, just to get a feel like, hey, why is that why am I not feeling heat? Or that feels a little toasty.
Kind of the standard thing, right? And we all know, there's variation in the levels of the heat, right? It's not 100% consistent. So you kind of get used to that feel throughout it, and you just pull that out, and it just cooks your hand, and you're like, gosh darn it, this is just brutal. So that was definitely the worst of the week, to say the least.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you, man.
All right, guys. So the promised guest for this week, that we didn't get last week, unfortunately, but he's here now. We have Dr. Warren Booth. How are you, sir?
Hey.
Hey, guys. Sorry about that. I was logging on, it was kicking in and kicking me off again.
Oh my God! It just didn't want you.
It's okay. We've been there for sure.
Hopefully, it's not a sign of the night to come. But everything's good. How are you guys doing?
Oh, good, man. We were just doing. So we do this segment every week called Best and Worst of the Week, and basically it's what's your best and worst of the week. So you made it just in time. If you have a best and worst of the week you want to talk about. Okay, don't feel the pressure.
I don't think have I had a best of the so the best is I switched all of my freedom breeders to ARS.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, and I will tell you that it's awesome. I love them both.
Interesting.
But I think ARS are just a higher quality build. I don't have. I think they're taking my freedom breeders apart. I was slicing my hand. I was, it's just.
I'm feeling that today from just doing some deep cleaning on the Freedom Breeder racks.
Right.
Yeah.
So none of that with the ARS.
Yeah.
But also I got I keep a lot of Antaresia and some of the smaller boas, and I keep them in the 55 racks.
Okay.
And I got their there's polycarb racks, the tubs, and they're just fantastic. They're just so walking into that room and you can actually see your animals and not just see a wall of gray tubs is really cool. So that was my highlight of the week.
That's awesome.
Did I have a bad part of the week? I don't think so.
That was last week.
It's been a good week. I did my second show my second reptile show. I vended my second show last weekend.
Okay.
In West Virginia, and it did well. So
Nice.
It's been great this week.
That's awesome.
Really good.
Those are the best kind of weeks, aren't they?
Dude, I've been breeding snakes for like 30 years, 32 years, and I've only vetted shows twice. And that was the Atlanta show in Bob Vu's show in Atlanta in August, and then this one in West Virginia, which is about 2.5 hours away from me, last weekend. So it's done really well. It's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
It's kind of weird being at a show and having to stand behind a table.
It's
and
the worst.
Just walk around.
It kills Patrick. It just tears him apart.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. When I did the Atlanta show, I had a couple of friends with me, so I could walk around still and see stuff. So this one, it was me and my 8-year-old son, so I was tied to that table. I didn't see anything else. So.
I even when I've been by myself, I still wander the show and just.
Oh, you do? Everything's locked, So if the worst they can do is they can walk away with one of like the clear displays, and they'll be seen
because that won't look suspicious at all.
I actually vended my last show ever, so I don't like taking my animals out of the facility. I just quarantine issues, and I know that like the risk is relatively low, but I'm just overly paranoid and lots of PTSD from on. And so I vended a show in Fredericksburg, Virginia, at the beginning of the month. And I just had such anxiety with having the animals out of the facility. Now they're all in quarantine for the next few months and just the whole thing. I was like, you know what? I can go to shows, I can set up, I can do the podcasting thing, I can meet and greet, I can talk. I'm just not bringing animals anymore because I can't deal with the stress of it. And it's so...
Yeah, I can see that, because I've been very strict with quarantine for the last whatever number of years, and so bringing animals out of it freaks me out, especially, my 8-year-old son breeds leopard geckos.
Oh, yeah.
And, so we brought, I think, 10 of them with us.
Okay.
And every kid wants to hold them. And I'm like, sorry, look, unless you're a genuine, purchaser, then I can't. I just can't let you hold the animals. And of course, you see the parent kind of frowning and stuff, and I then have to explain, look, we worry about cryptosporidia, we worry about X, Y, and Z, and then a lot of them then turn around and go, oh yes, sorry, we understand.
Yeah. I started this procedure at the very last show I did, of course. So if we can do that for the future, but I picked out one snake, and that was the holding snake. Right. It was Larry.
You can keep that away.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Larry was given away, and then we were done. So
end of the day, goodbye.
Larry, you had a good run. You did a good job, buddy. So I know crypto is relatively prevalent in leopard geckos. Right. Is it? I'd kind of been told, and I don't really know a ton about leopards, but I just kind of assumed every leopard gecko has crypto at this point. Is that not a thing?
I don't know. We've only got so leopard geckos are the first animal I ever kept. Okay. The first reptile I ever kept, 32 years ago, and I kept them, and at that point in time they were wild type or high yellow, and then the Tremper albino and the Murphy patternless came in, and I brought, I think, probably the first Tremper albinos into Ireland, into Northern Ireland at the time. But we knew nothing about cryptosporidium. Everything was great. Over the years, I've heard about it a lot. So we only got back into leopard geckos about a year ago, whenever my son 2 years ago said, he saw one of my reptiles magazines sitting on the coffee table and said, "Oh," he said, I like that. That's really cool. Could we get one?" I was like, yeah, definitely. My wife's like, "No, there's no way." But we said, if he's really interested after a year, it shows he's still, he really wants to do this. So for the year, he kept coming back, and he kept coming into my reptile room and showing interest. So at that point, it was, well, I'm not getting him one. I'll get him a pair.
Yeah.
And there'll be something decent, right? And the reason I did that was because I saw Steve Sykes in California, who breeds leopard geckos and hognose and so on. He would post about his kids, breeding animals and selling them and stuff. And I thought, yeah, it's a pretty cool idea. If my son Dylan does this, then any money he makes, we can put into a bank account, and he can't touch it until he's 18 years old.
Oh, I like
Okay,
that.
yeah, I like that.
Right, unless he wants to buy more animals to build up his own little kind of empire that he's doing. So what happened was I was just talking to a friend in Knoxville, my friend Shane Kelly, who's a ball python breeder. I think Small Town Exotics, and
Oh yeah.
and yeah, Shane's a great guy, and
Shane's the best.
he had 3 leopard geckos that he was selling, and I said, I know you want to get boas. Could we trade? And we traded a boa or 2 boas for the leopard geckos, and there were 3 females, and then I bought a male off Steve Sykes in California, and this is my son's birthday and Christmas present.
Nice, that's
And
awesome.
little did we realize that 8 months later, we would have 19 babies.
Oh,
And
they're quite prolific.
and they are phenomenal. He sold his first gecko last weekend at the reptile show with me and made $200. And I'm like, there's not many 8-year-olds make $200 selling a leopard gecko.
Man, no, that's awesome.
That's
But what he also did was, whenever I was at Bob Vu's show in Atlanta in August, he wanted to get black knight leopard geckos. So I bought a pair of those for $400, whatever. So he has to pay me back first. And I said, every sale you make, you have to pay me half back. Half of what you make. So he started into that, but it's been great. He's loving it, and it's so cool to see that kind of that excitement that I had 30 years ago as a 18, 17-year-old or whatever. He's got it now as an 8-year-old, which is really exciting. So my week, there's been a highlight of that, him selling his first gecko and all that kind of stuff, and his rack changes. There hasn't been a downside, I don't think. It's been a good week. Apart from feeling like crap, I got sick last week, and it's just kind of lingered with me.
Yeah.
But other than that, everything's really good.
That's awesome. I have never heard of actinomyces infections in ball pythons.
No.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of stuff out there that we're only starting to realize, because there's not a lot of research being undertaken.
Yeah.
You know this, Patrick, right? On any reptile, where's the funding to do it?
None now,
in the
right?
past, I'm in a very lucky position that I have an endowed chair position, so I got a certain amount of money that I can just spend on exploration.
Yeah,
but people can't do that,
and it's been interesting. So the first ball python genome just got published, and it was done with, I believe, an NIH heart and lung grant.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I actually had to push those guys to get that published.
Yeah, it's interesting.
If it's the one that I'm thinking of, I've said, look,
is it the one from Colorado University?
No, hold on. Is that the one that's also through Alpha?
This one, no. I don't think this is the Hudson Alpha one. No.
Oh, it's a different one as well.
Yeah, no. This is a new one. No, this is
right, because I told them
it's not chromosomal level. It's
okay.
Contig, but it's only 1,000 contigs. I mean, it's a good genome.
Oh, that's really good genome. Yeah, right. So for those of you that don't know, let's just interrupt very briefly.
Sorry, yeah.
When it comes to genomes, when people talk about sequencing genomes years ago, they think about, everyone thinks, oh, you sequence the genome. What happened was you sequenced lots of tiny bits of the genome, and a genome could be 1 billion base pairs long, and it might be in 15,000 little tiny pieces that they've made it. So you don't know which pieces go together and so on. Nowadays, we have the technology to actually sequence genomes from chromosome tip to chromosome tip. So we can say there are 17, 18, 19, whatever chromosomes, and we can actually examine that on a much finer scale. So to have 1,000 contigs is actually really good. That's totally different than what we did 2016 for some of the genomes that we worked on.
Yeah, I think that's almost human level, right? I mean, I know we have
It's pretty close to it, yeah. Yeah.
I think the human genome I work with right now, I think, is like 900 contigs or something around.
Right, and it all collapses once you get to the ends of the chromosomes, right? Because of the repeat regions. Yeah.
Right.
But so there is another ball python genome coming out soon.
Is it
it'll
coming
be slightly
out?
better?
You know,
Yes.
So,
from
Chase,
what I
I'm
know,
sorry.
yes.
I know we're getting super nerdy, Chase. I'm sorry.
No, I'm in.
So the one that just got published, it's annotated, but not with like proper gene names, right? It's just predicted gene, like gene 1, gene 2, gene.
Right. Yeah.
Do you know if the next one coming out is going to be like predicted KRAS or predicted TMP or whatever?
I don't know what way they're going to do it. I'm not part of it, but I
got you. Yeah.
I've got a collaborator who I'm working on a boa genome with and a carpet python genome with that I think is part of it.
Okay.
And then a friend of mine locally is obviously part of that there, who does the RGI stuff. And I've been pushing him. I said, look, you need to get this published, because if you don't, you've invested all this money and you're going to get left behind.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Having a genome doesn't mean you can pick out doesn't mean you can pick out a gene. No. That's a lot more work.
That's a lot more. Yeah. So this one, they went through and they used Breaker, and like they did a good job of annotating it. But like I said, it's not like gene name annotation. And so I'm actually going back right now and seeing if I can properly annotate. That'd
be cool. Yeah.
But I'm trying to properly annotate it. But it's a little, I'm used to working with human data. And so everything's already done for me and very easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So now I'm learning a few new bioinformatics tools that I haven't played with before. And for anybody that works with any kind of software, sometimes software packages don't work perfectly well together.
But the great thing about that, by you doing that, it paves the way for other genomes that are being done, right? So we're working on the boa constrictor genome. So there's been a boa genome for, I don't know, 8 years, 10 years or whatever. And it's 8 billion contigs or whatever. I'm working with the group that's doing the chromosome to chromosome tip level genome. Cool. And I'm part of it because of the parthenogenesis and the androgenesis work that we do.
Yeah.
We're also doing with that same group, we're doing a carpet python genome, for the same, for me, for the same reason.
So these, the goal is chromosome to chromosome. Y'all are trying.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do in my lab, the genomes that we're working on, they're all chromosome to chromosome tip to chromosome tip.
Okay.
Because we get a lot more out of that genome than having a whole bunch of contigs.
Yeah.
Understanding, especially for highly inbred species, understanding kind of regions of the genome that are being inherited as chunks versus not. It actually makes a lot more sense to have the chromosome to chromosome level, chromosome tip to chromosome tip level. Sorry to be so nerdy, but
no, that's
cool.
Tracy, real fast, we'll jump back for a second to the myces. She said there was one study done back on it that we've been battling with our girl that got sick. Different antibiotics small freaks concerned. Wow. Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Tracy, is this the same animal y'all kind of have been talking about over the past few months, I assume?
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember that.
Yeah.
If it's the same one, yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be a bacterial infection that's transmitted during breeding. Oof, that's rough. And then she said
What were the symptoms of it? I want to ask. If Tracy could comment, because I've seen stuff recently, and I've been talking to a friend about some issues with boas, where they've been getting bacterial infections in their boas, and it results in this kind of, the spine starts to really protrude, and they get this bloating. Just if you palpate the snake below the stomach, you get this kind of like bloating of the belly, and it's whether it's fluid filled or air filled, we don't know.
Oh,
but
interesting.
Yeah, but it's not like cryptosporidia. It's been tested. They've been testing for cryptosporidia, and it's not that. So I'm curious what will come up with these leopard geckos.
So she said
scales, pine coning, and skin just oh wow.
Interesting.
I wonder if that so if you look in fish, there's a pine cone disease. I forget the name of it, but it causes the scales of the fish to pop out, so the fish looks like a pine cone.
Interesting.
I wonder I think it's a bacterial infection. I wonder if it's something simple. Something similar. It's hard to treat, I believe, in fish.
Huh. And she said granular the tail as well. Interesting.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, similar to drops. There you go. Yeah, because I think I used to breed, 20, 30 something years ago. I used to breed Siamese fighting fish.
Okay.
And And I always read articles, and they would talk about it was dropsy. That's what they called it. I don't know why they called it dropsy, but the fish looked like pine cones. I never had it, thankfully, but it was a bacterial infection that caused the scales to become really inflamed, and they would flail out. So the
Oh,
fish
that's
looked like a pine
gnarly.
cone.
Oh wow.
But I've never heard of it. I've never heard of it in a snake or a lizard.
Man, I mean, you kind of said there's not a ton of money. There's basically no money in reptile research. Ironically, one of the few good things that came from COVID was a lot of money towards coronaviruses. So for like Nido and things like that, there all of a sudden we got actual good research and are finding out a lot of stuff on Nido. But outside of that, there's really not much. And I always love when people will be like, my collection is 100% clean, and I'm like, maybe. Like, there's possibly stuff floating in there that we just don't know because we can't test for it. But like, somebody will be like, yeah, I just randomly have a couple snakes die every year, and I'm like, healthy animals don't normally just randomly die. Like, there's no reason behind that, right? And
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's Nido. I'm not saying it's an RI. Like, there's lots of things that can happen, and we just don't know about those things because there's not a ton of research on it. And a lot of vets aren't trained on it either, which doesn't help. So it's a whole thing.
And we also have to realize that the term Nido sounds scary, and we've demonized it for the last 8 years or whatever. But every species that we've studied has a nidovirus.
Yeah.
Right. They all carry some level of nidovirus, right? The thing is it pathogenic or is it not? Is it going to kill the animal or is it not?
Yeah.
And that's where the studies have not really been undertaken. They're doing work on nidovirus. But when you get to the phylogeny of it, because viruses, as you know, viruses mutate so rapidly.
Yeah.
But you can have strains that don't do anything. They just cause, minor crap here and there. And you get strains that totally kill their host. We don't know anything about the differentiation between that there right now, because there's no money to study it.
Right. Well, that's kind of like the whole conversation taking back to COVID, right? There's strains of COVID where, Chase and I get it, and we're like, this was a delightful strain. Barely any cold, barely any symptoms. 10 out of 10 recommend. And then there's OG COVID, which wiped out half our country.
Absolutely, yeah. That's it. Whenever I got COVID, one time that I know of, I lost my taste and smell for 2 weeks, and I lost 10 pounds in weight. It was the best thing ever. It was a great diet. But
I got COVID one time, and I never lost sense of smell or taste, but I had no desire to eat. So I lost 10 pounds. Just.
But I know friends that got it, and it really screwed them up. And I'm like, and that's where. So that's a great example of what we don't know about nidovirus and sunshine virus and all those other ones that happen in snakes. We know with lots of viruses there are the pathogenic strains that really screw things up. And due to mutation, there are those strains that are just like lingering and they're like, do my thing, you're not going to be happy with me, but I'm not going to kill you.
Yeah.
And we just don't know the difference. So therefore, many of these tests, they test for common markers. And the common marker is you've got nidovirus. But you don't know whether it's the nidovirus that's pathogenic or the nidovirus that is non-symptomatic and therefore won't kill you. But the problem with that is that then people that then say, I'm nidovirus positive, means that I'm euthanizing this snake or whatever.
Yeah.
And you might not need to. We have nidovirus. We have all this crap that goes on with this, but it doesn't mean that it's systemic and it's going to cause problems.
Yeah.
That's sadly where the misunderstanding is.
Yeah. I agree. Do you think though, from like a biosecurity standpoint, like it's still a good idea to euthanize an animal that's positive for nidovirus, because if it transmits it, you can get a mutation and then things go wrong very quickly? Or
I would say just isolate it.
Okay.
Why euthanize it? If it's healthy and not showing symptoms.
Yeah, I think if you can isolate it, I think that's one thing. We'll use
because it's also been shown that the nidovirus positive animal, when they breed, if it's I'm not sure about those that are live bearers, but at least egg layers, if you remove the eggs and you hatch them, the babies are nidovirus negative, right?
I agree. I think from a biosecurity standpoint, it gets a little hairy. Like the process of trying to keep all of that separate feels to me like you're just begging for something to go go wrong.
Well, if you test your collection and there's a bunch that are nidovirus positive, you just stick them in a different room if you can do that.
I agree with that. Yeah, I get that.
Right? You don't house them in separate rooms. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Chase,
But
you hear that?
you try to isolate them as far as you can, and use separate feeding tongs, but the big thing is also how is it spread, right? So we think about fluids. Every year, I can guarantee that anybody that's got any kind of reptile collection, there's little forward flies, there's that pop up, they spring up here and there. They could be spreading, right? So even if you have them in the same room, they could be spreading between.
Yeah.
There's ways to control those as well. But I find it very hard to grasp the idea of just euthanizing the animal because it's positive for a nidovirus.
Okay.
But we don't know if the nidovirus is pathogenic or non-pathogenic. That's my biggest issue.
But I think that unknown though is what's such the scary kind of gray area for large.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you on every aspect of that. And so therefore, let me clarify. If you have the ability to isolate, then do it. If you don't, then you got to make up your decision whether you're going to euthanize or not.
Chase, I feel like I've heard of green tree python breeders doing that, where they basically have like the nido positive building.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The collection.
That's they just separated their rooms. I mean, thankfully we don't have to do that with ball pythons, or at least we haven't.
Ever. Fortunately, it's.
Is nido an issue in ball pythons a lot, or
not? I think it's.
It's probably there's probably more than what anyone likes to think.
Yes,
but it's not a situation because we test pretty much everything that would come into the facility to make sure.
Yeah,
and we get negatives, but
so
people have had like 6 snakes with an RI though, and they send it in. They get a nido, and then the snake's fine. A couple months later, and doesn't have RI.
So that's my. That's my argument there. Is it a pathogenic or not? Is it going to kill the animal, or is it going to be like with us? You get the sniffles. You kind of it is what it is. And you move on.
Yeah.
If we turn around and can you imagine it with humans? If you tested them, whether you got a cold or flu and you got it right, you're euthanized. It's like, well, we shed it. So it depends on the way snakes do it.
I get it. I test all of my breeder males every season before breeding season.
Yeah,
I do.
That's a good pre-breeding. That's a great thing to do if you can do that.
Yeah. So I do all the breeder males, and then I do random tests from 10% of the collection every season.
Yeah.
I've never had a positive in the collection. I had a positive in quarantine from a snake I bought, and she was actively showing symptoms when like she showed up, and I was like, "Nah, we're not dealing with this." It's I think it's become a boogeyman. I also kind of feel that way with basically no real anything other than just a feeling with like crypto and like hog noses and stuff. That's the boogeyman in my mind of the hog nose world. And when I talk to people that have had crypto pop up, and if crypto was as bad as it sold, you wouldn't have these situations in my mind where like collections would survive at all, right? Like people act like crypto is literally just the angel of death sweeping through a collection. And I know people where, they had 20 snakes and 20 snakes with basically no quarantine whatsoever, bare hand gloves, sharing water dishes, like the literal perfect situation to spread it. And only one snake would have it, after a year of monthly tests, only one snake tests positive.
Well, I think what that also shows is our lack of knowledge of understanding of how these things are spread.
Yeah.
We still have I keep a lot of emerald tree boas, and my biggest fear is regurgitation syndrome.
Yeah.
And there's lots of things I think that can cause that: dehydration, bacterial infection, and so on. But we have no idea. We have literally no idea. So you could have. I've heard of collections where they've had one animal that was brought in and it started regurgitating, and then every other animal, like a domino effect, did the same thing, and yet they'd never had contact with each other.
Oh, wow.
That's scary, right? That's scary.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever you think about the value of these animals, I've got 20-something emeralds in my basement, along with lots of other really rare corals. and that scares me, So, but it
Yeah.
shows you how little we know about this whole process. So when it comes to things like Nido and Sunshine Bar, all these different things, we don't really understand truly how they're spread. Part of it will be fluid based, contact between individuals, but it could also be other things. It could be host based. It could be based on their diet. It could be something that's coming out on the rodents. It could
Yeah.
be who knows.
Well,
What a
that
great
was
conversation to start this thing with, to keep everyone happy and
no,
Yeah,
so
of course.
smiling.
This
I
is a sunshine and rainbows kind of podcast.
I
So
Sunshine, virus, and rainbow. There you
yeah.
go.
it's good. I mean, I as a microbiologist, it's my first love. I love this stuff. I find it's
Your
very
first love. That's scary.
yeah. Well, like I when I first started like my path down science, I was in a class and I learned about bacteriophages, and that I fell in love with the whole idea of this evolutionary arms race between like a
Yeah,
virus and a bacteria. I mean, to the point where I have one tattooed on my hand.
that's
Uh,
cool. Yeah,
so I love the whole world, and yeah, it's scary, but it's also a
but it's
reality.
cool. It's cool to be able to apply it to what you work with,
Yeah, yeah, for
right?
sure.
And I kind of do that the same with the parthenogenesis, the androgenesis stuff.
Yeah,
It's not what my lab does, but we've done a lot of it. I can apply it to what happens in my reptile collection. I've got 140 snakes, so I can apply it to that. But
yeah,
also if it wasn't for hobbyists, and including Canova, who've sent me samples, we wouldn't have the data that we've generated that furthers the understanding of that field, which I think is really cool. So
yeah,
I like the way you do that, Patrick. That's pretty
yeah.
cool.
I like. It's a nice transition to I think what initially when you about having you come on is Partho, um, and all of that kind of started. We had everybody has Partho clutches, like that was a thing, and we had one that I feel might be relatively rare, but then again, like I don't know if it is because I don't know how good a lot of keepers actually do of really tracking some of this stuff. But briefly for those who are listening, like normally when we talk about Partho and ball pythons, the idea is if you have a pastel, you can only get either normals or super pastels. That's kind of the standard that people talk about, and I felt like that was a little limiting because we know that other forms of Partho happen where you could from a pastel get pastels or super pastels or normals. But I had never had like a solid clutch to show people improve that, right? And then I ended up with one this season where we had a desert ghost het pied female, and she produced a Partho clutch where we got a bunch of eggs that didn't make it, and then the two that survived was a desert ghost pied and then a desert ghost het pied, both confirmed through genetic testing. So it was kind of the first time that I had seen what I'm talking about, where you get that non-super form, right?
Were they both girls?
They were both girls, yeah.
Because that's one thing we've noticed with our Partho stuff. It's
It has to be.
always girls. It's always
Yeah.
girls.
It has to be because we showed a number of years ago, maybe 2018, 2019, with Tony Gamble at Marquette University. We showed that boas and pythons, by and large, are XY, XX chromosomes.
Okay.
Whereas the rest of the snakes, think about colubrids, the elapids and so on, they're all ZW, ZZ.
Okay.
Which simply means to put that simply is it means that those that are heterogamitic, so XY are males, ZW are females. It switches who are the opposite sex, right? Right. So us, we are females are XX, males are XY, right? So you can see the difference there. So therefore, the males determine the sex of the offspring. In most snakes, it is females are ZW and the males are ZZ. So the female determines the sex of the offspring. Doesn't matter. The male can only deliver a Z. In mammals, the males can deliver an X or a Y, right? So they decide.
Yeah.
What we found out in whatever it was, 2018, 2019, was that while snakes are ZZZW, boas and pythons, by and large, are XXXY, just like mammals.
That's really cool.
And this all came from the parthenogenesis work that we were doing, because we were finding that the parthenogens were always female. So we were like, well, why are we not finding males? Because if a parthenogen is female, it could either be an XX or alternatively a YY, which shouldn't really exist. Sorry. A ZZ or a WW, so you should get males and females.
Yeah.
So why are we not getting the ZZ males? What's happening there? And the Z chromosome is weird, small, so it could screw things up, but it didn't make sense. So the most parsimonious explanation was they're XX and XY. And genetically, we determined that. And we published a paper in it. The weird ones are the Madagascan boas. They are just like the rest of things. They're ZZZW.
Yeah.
So we have parthenogen dimerals that are males that are ZZ. But all the boas and the pythons, other than the Madagascans that we know of so far, are all female. So they can only be XX.
Wow.
It's such a weird evolutionary adaptation, and you wonder what.
And you know what's cool, Patrick? Sorry to interrupt. What's cool about that is the boas and the pythons evolved that independently. They're different lineages. They're not the same group. People think about boas and pythons being similar. Boas are 50 million years older than pythons. Right?
That's
They're
so cool.
really old, and they evolved that independently, which is kind of really cool.
That's crazy.
No, it's nuts, man. Nature is so weird, but
Yeah.
so let's go down the Partho path a little bit. Can you explain Partho in layman's terms for the people? I know I loosely did it, but do you have a better way of explaining it that might
for ball python breeders?
Yeah,
it's really
we
simple.
already dumbed down genetics enough with you've only got 3.
Now I will say this: when we talk about Mendelian genetics,
yeah,
I will say that there are probably more ball python breeders, boa breeders, colibri breeders that know more about Mendelian genetics than seniors in high school that have had Mendelian genetics for years.
I agree with
because
that.
they really think about what it means to have if I cross X with Y, and what's different is that it's crossing X with Y, it's crossing X, Y, Z, and so on with, A, B, C, D, E, and what are the combinations. So the hobbyists have contributed so much to our understanding of in my case parthenogenesis and androgenesis than any theoretical biologist ever has done, and any Drosophila geneticist ever has done, which is the key. So we're putting together a paper and a number of papers that really tie that together. What parthenogenesis is, as you probably all know, which you wouldn't have probably thought about 10 years ago, is that it's just simply it's a female producing offspring without the contribution of a male. Without the genetic contribution of a male. So a female could breed with a male. A male could breed, or a male or female could breed and produce offspring that are sexual, and you get what you expect. So an albino breeding to a normal, you get heterozygous. With parthenogenesis, a wild type breeding to an albino, all of the offspring, the parthenogenetic offspring will be female, and they'll either be albino or they'll be wild type. There won't be a heterozygous. What we've also found is that, and you probably know this already as well, is that the breedings can happen, and some of the litter or some of the clutch can be parthenogenetic, and some of them can be sexual.
Yeah.
So therefore you get this whole mix. But if you're finding genetic combinations that are not expected from the pair that you produce, then it suggests something else is going on, and that's what we find out. We get emails every other week about, I bred this to that and I got this. It's not right. What should I be expecting? And can I send you samples? And years ago we used to test everything for free, but now we can't do that now. It's
a lot. It's a big undertaking. Yeah.
Well, because we move to different sequencing technologies, and it just makes it not feasible to really do that work for free, But now when you hear about it, it's just like, yeah, it is. There's no need to discuss it further. What you've got as a parthenogen or not.
Yeah.
And we've had some weird ones, like we did some weird ones recently. My friend Nick Mutton had some really unusual carpet python clutches. He had 3 females that produced only females. And the offspring seemed to be parthenogens. But when we tested them, when we sequenced them, they were sexually produced. But so there are unusual ones, but generally you can tell from just the captive history and what the offspring are and their sex, if they're parthenogens or not.
Yeah, for sure. Real fast, Ashley asked, let's pull this up. Pull up on stage. Have there been any documented cases of parthogenic ball python hatchlings reaching maturity and reproducing on their own, or is that still just a theoretical possibility?
Yeah, so we've done it
From
twice.
personal experience, we've got them up to adult size girls, but we've not gotten a clutch out of them.
Yeah, so Mike
we've done it twice.
You've done it.
Oh.
Yeah, so we've done it with boas and we've done it with ball pythons. So we had a female albino Parthenogenesis sent over from the UK who had produced a clutch, and of that clutch, one hatch in itself was a Parthenogenesis. So a female produced a Parthenogenesis. Now, both of those died within a very short period of time. So the female,
there's a lot
so
of
let me. So the secondary Parthenogenesis died within about a year and a half.
Okay.
Right. So you know, what happens with parthenogenesis is they're not cloning the mother. They're producing essentially half clones, half of her genome. Each chromosome has been almost doubled. You know, they're not actually doubling, but it's almost doubled. But it means that therefore they're really highly inbred, right? So whenever you think of here's my chromosome from my mother, here's my from my father, there's lots of variation there. When it's only from your mother, there's no variation, or a little bit of variation, right? So they're highly inbred, and as a result of it, it caused problems. So what we found with the secondary Parthenogenesis, it lived about a year and then it died. Its metabolism collapsed. It was developing well, but it got to a point about a year and a half years old, and just everything despite feeding every 10 days, it just deteriorated.
Wow.
The female, 2 years after she produced that first clutch, we bred her again to a male clown. So it was an albino to a clown. And she produced 6 eggs. She laid those eggs on day, I think it was 16 or 18 post-ovulation shed.
Wow.
So really early.
Very early.
Of those 6 eggs, 5 of them died within a day or two. But 1 egg developed, but when you candled them, you could see that they all had veins, but very weak. 1 egg developed, and it hatched as a male double het clown albino. So it was fine. The female never really recovered from that. As much as she would feed, she just deteriorated, and within about 6 months, she died.
Wow.
With boa constrictors, we had the first ever paper I published on parthenogenesis was in 2011 in Biology Letters on boa constrictors. I was given one of those female parthenogens, and I raised it up, and it took about 8 years to raise it up to a level where I thought it could breed. And I paired it with a male. I paired it with it was a boa caramel, and I paired it with a harlequin boa, and they bred. And she also had a really weird gestation. Instead of sitting on the heat, she would sit in the cold more. So I've been breeding boas, as I say, for about 30 something years. So I know that if I hit them with a heat gun, I know that a gravid boa is normally about 86.6 degrees, and that's what it is. This one was like 82, 83, sitting on the cold end. Gestation in my group normally takes between 95 and 104 days, normally about the 95 to 99 days. This one was like 120 days, and then she finally gave birth. And she produced 9 offspring, no slugs. 5 were live, 4 were stillborn. And she never recovered. Despite feeding, she just kept losing weight. Her metabolism seemed to just collapse, and she also never recovered, just like the ball python. So both of them had this characteristic of really weird gestations, really weird kind of pregnancies, and also not great reproductive outcomes.
Wow.
So it would be really interesting to see, Chase, with what you're raising, if you decide to breed them, how that that pans out.
No. I've actually attempted to breed them for a couple of years now, and just nothing's going on. Like no follicle growth.
It could be across the board.
Like I'll ultrasound through and I'll pair them, every few months, just because they've been so kind of lackluster.
Right.
And I mean, they're not the best eaters either, but there's never any follicle growth at all, because I'm always looking with the ultrasound machine, just going through, and there's nothing.
That'd be because they can be across the board. It depends on what chromosomes have been the ones that passed over right to the offspring. So you can get some that are great and some that are not. But I will tell you that in my lab here at Tech, I've probably got 150 parthenogens just chilling out, doing their thing.
Oh wow!
And that's ball pythons, boas, Corallus, Antaresia, a bunch of pit vipers, different rattlesnakes, different copperheads, cottonmouths. I've got a couple of aranid lizards. Um, what else have I got? I've got a crocodile. You know, there's a whole bunch of different ones that they just don't do well. Yeah,
All
in
right, guys.
general.
Field
Yeah.
trip to Dr. Boots' lab.
I was gonna say, yeah, I'm ready for that field trip.
Yeah, I'm only, but what about like 6 hours from you, Chase? Right? You're in Atlanta,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
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 We got yeah, but the problem is you're going to just get to see a bunch of frozen things, which is not exciting, right?
Well,
So,
that's true.
That's all right.
yeah, but we do have two live parthenogens from you guys that were
Yeah,
sent
yeah.
up. The androgen died, and I can talk about
Oh,
that
yeah.
later on. Yeah, but there's the two parthenogens are just eating and they're doing what they should be doing. Yeah.
Yeah, with a couple of the Partho babies we've had this past year, we've done it as just their pets. We
Yeah,
let the
that's
like,
exactly
and we
it.
did it with like
Yeah.
our Patreon group, and we let them know like, hey, they're gonna be pets, probably gonna grow slow, need some special care. They are Partho, and people still took them in. We just let them know up front they're probably
Yeah,
never gonna be breeders.
here's the deal. So we published a paper in 2014 on parthenogenesis and reticulated pythons, and I think we included ball pythons in that there. But one of those parthenogens is at the Knoxville Zoo,
Oh,
and a friend of mine is the curator at Knoxville Zoo. And I was there a year ago, and he said, "Oh yeah, and here's one of the parthenogens," and it's like a 12-foot, 14-foot reticulated python,
That's cool.
and it looks
wow.
great. It looks totally healthy, so for some of these people to get them, it might turn out fantastic.
Yeah.
But for a lot of them, it doesn't turn out so great, But
Yeah,
you
thankfully
just
we
don't
don't
know.
have a lot of Partho babies. That's a blessing in
Yeah,
itself. That it's not a
yeah,
common occurrence.
yeah. It's more common than we think, but certainly not. Like I've had it in boas here that I breed, and I produce about 5 or 6 litters a year. But and I get emails all the time about it in ball pythons. I've got samples sitting here on my desk at my home for Western hognose snakes and stuff. But
Yeah.
it's certainly a lot more common than we ever thought it was, and it's
I,
probably due to the levels of inbreeding, and because we now know with fruit flies with the Drosophila, they can produce parthenogenetically using the same mechanism, and they've tracked it down to three different genes, and if they're in the different combinations, they produce parthenogens.
Wow.
So we're collecting samples that will ultimately sequence to look at those three specific genes once we know a little bit more about them. But that's more hobby research because nobody will ever fund that. That's me
Yeah.
paying for
zero
that myself.
funding for that project, but it's really cool.
No, it is. And because I've always believed it's been a heritable trait. I
Yeah.
believe that if you can raise a parthenogen up to sexual and you breed it to a wild type, that the offspring will have a higher propensity of producing parthenogenetically. We see that in quail, we see it in chickens and turkeys and so on. So why wouldn't we see it in ball pythons and snakes as well? It's not deleterious. It doesn't kill them. A female produces parthenogenetically. It is what it is.
Yeah.
They can go on to produce sexually, but their offspring are kind of a wee bit screwed. So.
A little bit, but also like on some level, right? Like there are species, not necessarily of snakes, but like lizards and things that almost exclusively reproduce through Partho, correct?
Yeah, but that's a totally different mechanism.
Okay.
So, like we think about reproduction, we think about sexual reproduction. It's very straightforward: male,
Yeah.
female, boom. That is what it is. Asexual is totally different, man. Like you get the groups that are there's all these whiptails and night lizards and so on that produce parthenogenetically, and geckos that do it purely. All they produce is asexually. You don't need a
Yeah.
male. So what happens is the eggs that they produce have got all of the chromosomal combinations that they need to make the offspring. So they're ultimately clones of the mother,
Okay.
right? And the mother is happy; she's living in the environment; it's perfect. The offspring they produce are exactly the same. For things like ball pythons, boas, all the snakes, apart from the Brahminy blind snake that we know so far, bunch of lizards, sharks, birds, they produce facultatively, which means that basically, when you think about egg production, you start off with a sex cell, it divides in two, and then divides again into four. So it goes and it divides. So essentially, you end up with four cells with one set of chromosomes each. What happens is one of those works and it becomes the egg, the rest of them are discarded. But with parthenogens, it appears that this one that divided into two, they should split, and either they don't split, or else they come back together again and they form an egg, a zygote. The thing about those is they carry almost the same set of chromosomes, right? Almost identical, apart from slight variation that occurs, but very, very, very minimal. And they fuse and they form the offspring. So therefore, the egg believes it's been fertilized, and that produces this offspring, right? For years we thought they came back together again, but now I believe they just never separated, because one of the genes that they identified in fruit flies is related to the separation of those eggs, of those cells.
Oh.
So my feeling is that they actually just don't separate, and they fuse. One of them is about well, I'll ignore it, but so it's a really complex system, but it's clearly heritable.
Yeah.
It's not a random process. And what's really cool about it also is we've seen it in crocodiles, we see it in snakes, we see it in lizards, we see it in birds, we see it in sharks and elasmobranchs, all the different sharks and rays and chimeras, and they all use the exact same mechanism, which suggests this ancestral trait that was just not deleterious. It doesn't kill the mother, so it's just passed along.
Wow.
That's so cool.
It just screws up our breedings.
Yeah.
Dude, this year was a weird one for me. 3 of the first 7 clutches that started hatching were all Partho, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be a weird season." I can already feel it.
Was it from the same male that you used?
Nope, different males. It was just kind of random.
That's really interesting. So I've been thinking about this for a while, because the 2014 paper we published, one of the sets of samples that we had were from either 2 or 3 different females, but they were bred to the same. I think maybe it was that paper, or maybe it was separate work. But it was 3 females that were bred to the same male, and they all produced parthenogenetically. What I didn't follow up with that breeder was whether those females were related, because another case that we had maybe 10 or 12 years ago, maybe 14 years ago, and I think it was with Frank Martin, a great boa breeder, a friend of mine. He sent me samples from 2 motley boas that were siblings that both produced parthenogenetically, and it all adds up to this being a heritable trait. We just don't have enough samples, which is part of the reason why I just accumulate them. I just set them in the corner and in the freezer and just build them up, because I think in time we'll start to be able to understand. The genes that are there in fruit flies are often there in boas and pythons and so on, so we can look for the homologs, the similarities.
Right.
So we'll see over time. But I do believe it's a heritable trait.
Yeah, and fortunately, sequencing costs are going down, every minute basically.
Yeah, right.
And so eventually, you wait long enough, you're basically going to be able to sequence stuff for free. So.
Well, that's it. Still, it costs us about $3,500 to sequence about 250 samples, depending on what we're doing.
Okay.
For RadSeq,
Yeah.
it's done. So for adding in samples here and there, it doesn't cost much money, but but it's still expensive enough. If you turn around to someone and say, because the thing is, if people contact me and say, "Could you test this?" and I'm, "Yeah, we can," but you've got to add in technician time, you've got to add in analysis time, you got to add in, so it ends up adding to the whole cost. It's beyond, for me. It used to be, we can get cool papers out of this here and I'll do it for free. Now it's like, we know it's widespread, so unless it's something really unique, I can't really invest the money in myself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
for doing stuff like that, you said RadSeq, so y'all don't do like whole genome seq, or
we do now. We pretty much do. So it depends on what we're sampling. So it depends on the data set that we're working on. If we got a RadSeq run going in, if it's parthenogenesis, you can just run on a RadSeq run. If it's something really interesting, we can put it in a whole genome, because we got these things going on complementary at the same time.
I gotcha. Yeah, I was looking at whole genome sequencing the other day, actually just looking at cost comparisons and stuff, and I didn't realize how cheap stuff like Ultima has their new machine out. And it's what was it? Ends up being like $25 for a 2 gigabase genome essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but realize that you got to have a lot of samples to make it $25.
You do, but it's still stupid cheap. Like, it's still pretty crazy.
Yeah,
That were.
absolutely.
It's still crazy that when I started grad school in 2013, Illumina had just gotten the first $1,000 human genome, and that
Yeah,
was the big deal, right?
yeah,
And,
yeah, yeah.
and I remember professors talking about it and being like, "Oh, like is it really viable even for a hospital to still do it at that price?" Blah blah blah. And then now you can essentially do a human genome for $100, right?
Oh yeah, we can do it. Yeah, it's peanuts.
If only Watson and
I,
Crick saw us with ball pythons now. Am
oh,
I
I know.
right?
Guys, I'm gonna run and get another glass of water.
Yeah, you're
I'll
good.
be just a
You're
minute,
good.
okay? Thank you.
Uh, Jason, we nerdy not enough for you?
I love it.
Dude, it's so cool.
Dude, this is the good wheelhouse here.
This is fun stuff, right?
It is.
I
I
do.
truly love this.
I do think Partho happens way more than we realize, and I I would go as far as like when known breeders sell snakes that don't prove out and like weird things happen, it's Partho and we didn't catch it, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's amazing. I feel like shed testing.
Yeah.
It makes it so much easier to see versus like,
Yes.
oh, missed everything, or this is just weird. Who knows? Egg stress, and then they just go out the door.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's something like you start catching, and you're like, oh, okay, this we tested it for this, this, and this, and we know what Dad was, so it should be this, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, well, I'm glad we tested. And I even started doing that with, I'll test for genes I know for sure in the snake, just to like confirm certain things, right? To make sure at times now, just to double down on that. Because like I said, I think it happens far more often. And I've said that kind of for years, but I also think the crazier our combinations get, the more likely, or the more we're going to see it, I should say. Maybe not the more likely it is, but the more we see it.
Yeah, because it's funny. I mean, we've probably already had 10 clutches, though, this year where we can confirm at least a couple of the babies in it. Yeah, those are definitely Partho. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy, man. And I think the wild one, too, is, we're talking about you can have sexual reproduction and Partho reproduction in the same clutch.
Yes.
Which is so frustrating. I mean, come on. That's just rude.
But and we've seen that this year. We're like, we've had them. We're like, oh, yeah, these are the normal ones from the dad we should have had. And then there's like 2 that are like, nope, something's wrong here.
I had one this season. We just tested it. It was the same. That's what we're talking about. Like one sexual reproduction and one Partho. The snakes looked identical. They both were like super fires with a shit ton of genes in them. And the only reason we know that one's Partho and one's not is because the one that is Partho is not het for Clown and Desert Ghost, and the one that is het for Desert Ghost and Clown. That was. And so when I tested, I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't possible because Dad was a double visual. So, yeah, it's pretty nuts, and it's frustrating. And that's why I tell people, like, I test a lot of stuff now to make sure. Warren, I was just telling Chase, like, the genetic testing side of this has helped a lot with IDing and discovering Partho babies. And I had a clutch where I produced 2 super fires in it, and when we went to test them for Clown and Desert Ghost, one of them wasn't Desert Ghost or Fire, and Mom wasn't, but the other one was, which is what Dad was. So I was like, so you had 2 snakes that looked identical, except for one was double het and one wasn't, which is Partho, right? And it's just like, oh my goodness, you could have sold both of those and just rolled on with your life. But yeah, it's pretty nuts. Oh, you're muted, good sir. There you are.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
Yeah, I think the other thing is that people think the Parthos are identical. They're not identical, as I mentioned earlier. So you can have multiple Parthenogens in a litter or a clutch, and they're all different from each other.
Yeah.
But the weird thing, as I mentioned earlier, is the fact that you can have Parthenogens and you can have sexuals in the same litter or a clutch, and that screws things up. What's also interesting is that the mechanism of parthenogenesis we understand, but we just don't understand how much of the genome becomes homozygous. Right? So the idea is that you got a chromosome that fuses with another it's called a polar body that contains a set of chromosomes that are almost identical to the egg, but not fully. So at the tips, we believe there's variation, but we don't know how much that variation spreads into the chromosome. And if you look back to some of the really early work, it suggests about 66% of the chromosome could be variable. But what we always find in the work that we're doing now is very minimal. It's 3%, 4%, 5%, right?
Okay.
So one of the reasons, again, that we're collecting all of these parthenogens is that we're sequencing the whole genomes to really start mapping where this variation exists on the chromosome.
Yeah. Okay.
To really understand this mechanism. It's really boring to everybody other than me, but it's really if it wasn't for ball pythons mainly and boa constrictors, we wouldn't know this, right? We wouldn't understand this. So you made this joke, Chase, a minute ago before I ran off about what Watson and Crick would think. I think Watson and Crick would shit their pants if they understood what we're doing with parthenogenesis, because how we're starting to understand genome evolution and inheritance, I think they would turn around and just cream their pants about how exciting this is.
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
is, for me, this is my hobby research. This is not my day-to-day research. This is what I do on the side.
Yeah.
And I'm still blown away every day that I think, holy shit, we were rewriting the books on sex chromosomes. We're rewriting the books on parthenogenesis, and it's all based largely on ball python breeders.
Yeah.
Right. On the data that we're getting from we get a lot of samples from boas, but primarily the samples we get are from ball python breeders, which I think is phenomenal.
No, yeah, it's super cool that ball pythons are contributing so much into
absolutely,
into this research.
Like Chase and I were talking, I think because we've gotten so far into the mutations, right, and all of the recessives and everything else, I think that's also why we're catching Partho more now than we did when
absolutely
we were 4 mutations.
Yeah.
And so I think that plays a big part. I had somebody text me a question, which we kind of talked about earlier. Ask him if it's possible to get a het and a Partho in ball pythons. I mean, I'm going to say yes because I have one.
So the answer is yes, right? so theoretically, right. So what we see generally is no for the traits that we know of, right? But as I mentioned a minute ago, it depends on. So what happens is that chromosomes cross over, and that's where variation is formed, right? Where it originates, and it depends on where the gene is that corresponds to that trait is located. So if it's in a region that doesn't cross over, then it's homozygous, and that's what you get.
Yeah.
But if that crossing over occurs a little bit earlier or a little bit later, we might find heterozygous individuals being passed on. So it's only now through this gene mapping that you guys are doing that we're actually seeing you could get a heterozygous individual and the rest could be homozygous.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. But you get the odd, but again, which is why we're collecting all of these parthenogens to start really understanding where do we see the crossing over occurring,
right?
Where do we see that recombination, which I know for 99% of the people listening to this are just going, what the hell are you guys talking about? But it's really exciting to kind of understand where this variation is created, you know? So, yeah.
No, I think it's great. And I think too, like, it's a good model for people, as they're dipping their toes into science in general, to understand, like, science is very rarely black and white, right? Like, and so this whole idea, like I said, when we started this was like, you speak to a lot of ball python breeders and it's just, Partho is this, if you have a pastel, you either get supers or normals, end of list. And it's like, well, that's not how science works normally.
Yeah, right.
And also there's not enough research specifically in ball pythons to make that statement either.
Right, absolutely. So we might find it, yes, if that gene is closer to the center of the chromosome.
Yeah.
The closer to the center of the chromosome. So you think about a chromosome, being whatever, right? Think about it like that,
An X, yeah.
The closer you are to the X, to the point, the more likely you are to be homozygous. Right, the crossing over is going to occur, right? Or less likely the crossing over is going to occur. When you move out from that, you're more likely for crossing over to occur. So, say for example, pied is close to the center, you'll be pied or you'll be normal, right? Wild type. But if it moves further out from there, well, you could get heterozygous, or you could get one or the other. So it makes it a little bit more complex.
Yeah, I think just that in itself, though, right? Which is not something most people are going to think of, because why would they? is the location on a chromosome, right?
Yeah.
Like when you
You're
start,
right. Yeah.
That's
Who
not
cares
your
about
average
that?
ball python
Like that.
breeder concern when they
You
see a
start- yeah,
potential
you start-
Partho.
but also
You never
like,
know. In 10 years' time, it might be different. So yeah.
That's true.
I don't think you're wrong, and also like, so even when we talk about, you know, breeding and linkage and things, right? Like, there's probably genes that do move a little bit more frequently together
Right.
that we don't really. You just kind of think of it as like bad odds, almost, right, or good odds, maybe.
Right.
And
Yeah.
in reality, there's slight linkage or some linkage or linkage completely, right?
So linkage, for people that don't understand, is
Sorry.
basically genes that are beside each other. The closer they are together, they're more likely to be inherited together as blocks. Right. So say, for example, you had, just by chance, albino and desert ghost. Right. They're more likely to be inherited together than to be separately. Right.
Right. If they're like basically the closer they are together, the more likely they are to go together. Right. That's the,
Yeah.
you know, you're more likely to go to dinner with your neighbor than somebody that lives in another state.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good example. Yeah.
That's
it.
yeah, that's solid.
Though not always, but yeah.
No, you know, I would definitely go to dinner with y'all far before any of my neighbors. But yeah, I think stuff like that as we really dive more into the genome, and especially once we get really good annotated genome for all of these species, and we can start looking at chromosomal location and distances, there might be these points where, yeah, you're like, oh, red stripe and confusion are only, you know, X many base pairs apart, which gives me a percentage of linkage, blah, blah, blah. So when I do these pairings, I actually should see this percentage, not 50-50 or
Right.
whatever, right?
Exactly. That's great. Yeah.
And all of a sudden that can change pairings. And I think
Yeah.
what's really exciting is then you kind of get into the breeding hacking side of this, right? Where you're like, how can I really min-max breeding to the extreme? I think that's, for me, that's where I kind of see a lot of this.
And I think, from what I know, right, so with Justin and Canova and Clutch, that's where that kind of thing will come into play, when you can start really turning around and saying, right, what's the true likelihood of a cross occurring? And so that's really exciting. You know, I think, you know, as much as, you know, I used to keep a lot of ball pythons. I don't, because as much as I could breed them, I could never sell them. People didn't know me for ball pythons; they knew me for boas and tree boas, you know, and stuff. But it makes them a really cool system, really cool model system to study inheritance, you know, and they become so 20, 21, 20. I defended my PhD 20 years ago. So 21, 22 years ago, I was at a meeting in in Brno, which is just outside Prague. And I stayed in a hotel, and I overlooked Gregor Mendel's pea garden.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's not very exciting. But thinking about how far we've come, you know, it's actually really exciting to think, you know, you've gone from tall and short plants to being, you know, with ball pythons, for example, 70, 80 different traits that we can now understand the inheritance of. And it changes how we think about Mendelian genetics, which I think is really, really exciting. So I think if we go back to, you know, Watson and Crick, I think if you went back to Gregor Mendel, you would really about the potential of what you can do with this year.
My genetics professor in undergrad was convinced that Mendel was falsifying data regularly.
Well, it's been shown, right? It's been shown that the likelihood that he did is pretty high. It's probably not falsifying, but probably manipulating to make the
skewed a little bit.
I just
but if sorry, Partho, to interrupt, but if you think about what you just said about how inheritance can occur, the likelihood it's going to go one or the other, it's probably the exact same thing, right?
Yes.
Of course, being a man of the cloth, he probably shouldn't have fabricated that, right? but
66% and 33% sounds so much better than
it does.
Number he was
absolutely, yeah. And the worst thing is that he died before that all came to light.
Of course.
Right. Yeah. So he never saw his genetics, really, his theory. And you know what?
Yeah.
What year was that? It was a long time ago, and it's still to this day, you know. So but yeah, as I say, I remember sitting on this window ledge in this hotel in Brno, overlooking Mendel's pea garden, thinking, oh, that's pretty cool. And then the next day thinking, there's nothing there, it's just grass. And that's not exciting at all. And I thought about what we could do with other cool systems. And nowadays I look at what ball pythons have done. And I believe what boas will do, and so on. It's just really exciting.
I think this, without going like crazy deep, but like this is one of the beauties to me about science is the things that we don't expect to be great tools or to be revolutionary sometimes come from so CRISPR-Cas9 system, right?
Mm-hmm.
The bacterial defense system against bacteriophages that, depending on who you talk to, George Howard or the Brodens, some very smart people, and those people, I think UCLA, are fighting over who really discovered it, but neither here nor there. We've turned it into this gene editing system, right?
Yeah.
That was very innocuous at the beginning. That they were just like, oh, this is just like Talon, or this is just all of another bacterial immune defense system. And now it's changed the world, right? And like you talk about, the ball pythons, when it comes to studying parthogenesis, maybe right now this isn't world changing, maybe it never is, but it's one of the better systems I think we have right now because it's so quick turnaround, so easy to visually see that stuff, right? Because we're breeding for these mutations. It's just a fantastic system, and you don't always know what you're going to stumble across.
I think I've always said about scientific discovery, it's not about the impact it makes today. It's about the impact it makes in the long term. We have no idea what finding, the mechanism of parthogenesis in ball pythons could mean to understanding, evolutionary processes 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. But the fact that we have that seed, the fact that we started to really understand that, it just sets that motion. It sets the whole thing in motion. And if we didn't have that, we're already in the past, right? So I think about I work very closely with a really close friend of mine, a really great friend of mine, Gordon Shewitt. Gordon Shewitt, the Shewitt line is known for carpet pythons and for Brazilian rainbows and hog island bows, but he and his brothers did those. But he was a professor for herpetology, and he now works with Bob Ashley at the Chiricahua Desert Museum.
Yeah.
But he and I have worked together on parthenogenesis papers for 12, 13, 14 years. And he published a paper in 1997 on parthenogenesis, and it was hard to publish. It went through a number of different journals before they finally published it. And then from there, it disappeared. The whole idea of parthenogenesis disappeared. And then in 8 years later, a paper was published, I think in Journal of Heredity, on parthenogenesis in Burmese pythons. And that went worldwide. That went crazy because around the same time we heard about parthenogenesis in Komodo dragons and then parthenogenesis in hammerhead sharks. So that stuff went worldwide. It turned out that paper on parthenogenesis in pythons was just incorrect. It wasn't right. And we corrected it later on down the line.
Yeah.
But still, all that work acts as foundations to build up to where we know now, right? So I think about what we're at this point, and we're really now starting to understand what the mechanism is and what it really means for understanding the evolution of the trait. Where this goes from here is what happens whenever we bring it into the real world with boas and ball pythons, because that's what's really going to have an effect, right?
Yeah.
Where we're going to see it is in snake breeders and lizard breeders, and that's what I am as well. I might be a professor, but I have 100 freaking snakes in my basement and tortoises and
Right?
lizards. This is my hobby.
Yeah.
So being able to tie things together is really exciting. But it shows that I think what we're learning is really advancing the field.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool that we're advancing a basic biological field using reptiles and using ball pythons and using boas as a model. I think is really exciting.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for all of these people that are breeding snakes and just randomly calling up or emailing saying, "Hey Warren, I got this," and here in the and sending me shed skins, we wouldn't be able to do this work, And the more we can get, if people are still, and I will put this out now, anybody that produces a parthenogen, I would love to get a shed skin or partial shed skin of the mother and the offspring and the potential father, and to send it to me, because we'll add it to our database, because we are sequencing whole genomes for this here to try and understand it further. But it is my hobby. I'm putting my own stuff and my own money into this here to try and further this, because it's a really cool system.
No, it's awesome. I find all of it unbelievably fascinating, and it is, like I said, it's incredible how far we've come in such a short period of time, relatively speaking. You know, we've gone.
It is crazy. Like just the last few years,
Yeah,
have been insane for just
it's
our
advancing
industry, our
dramatically.
small industry.
Yeah. No, it's great. You know, I love it. It's fun because, as I said, it ties my hobby to get my life is science and it's my hobby.
yeah.
And snake breeding has been my hobby for 30 something years. And it's just nice to get these things crossing over, which is kind of cool.
No, it's fantastic, right? It's exhilarating, and like I said, just in the past few years with the genetic testing and starting to figure out chromosomal location and all of that, it's changing things far more than I think most people realized it would on different levels, right? It's beyond just the now I can test these and figure out what I'm going to hold back or not hold back. Right now, really, really dive into what the pairings should be. So
like I think about like how far we would be if there was funding for this kind of work. You know, like everything we've done has always been on my dime. You know, and it still is. So therefore, it means that a lot of the sequence that we run, we have to wait until I've got stuff going through, and I've got space to run it. Like, so, for example, we're about to run 100 scrub pythons, and I thought I was going to run it next week, but we had a whole bunch of other samples come in, so therefore they're going to get pushed back. You know, so it's all based on how I can fit these into other things. You know, people aren't paying me to do this. You know, and you're not getting the if I was to, it would be great to be able to have a gift account where people said, here's this much and that much, and be able to use that to do this research. But people aren't really interested in it, you know. But it's really interesting to understand. But for me, it's not just the reptile, as I said. It's the understanding of the advancement of basic science, which I think is really cool. 150 years time, 200 years time, I hope that they'll turn around and say, oh yeah, Booth et al. 2014 or 2022 or 2032, they discovered that, you know, and that's different. You know, that's kind of cool to have a legacy effect of that there.
Yeah, I think it's been also like, I think even just the XY discovery, right? Like all of a sudden answered banana, right? That was
right.
Things like, how the fuck is this happening? And then you're like, hold my beer, guys, XY, and we're all like, oh, now it makes sense, boys. We got this.
And when you look at that, so a lot of that came from parthenogenesis work. Why were we only getting females?
Yeah.
And why were we only getting males?
Right.
And when Gordy, Shewitt, and I sat down at the biology of pit fibers in 2014, I think, a meeting, and we sat down with a pen and paper, it was like the most parsimonious, the most simple explanation of this is they're that and they're that. And that was it.
Yeah.
It was sitting down with a beer and saying it's got to be that or that. Otherwise, if it's not, we should be getting also males and females or whatever.
Yeah.
And then we did genome sequencing work and we were able to show that, which was really cool.
Yeah, it's you know.
But also shows how much science is driven by having a beer with friends.
But
and coming up with cool stuff, you know.
There's a Twitter feed overly on methods. And it's delightful when you like read it, and it's you start realizing how science is actually done, and it's like is made when student accidentally tipped beaker X into plate C.
Right.
Yes.
I do think about, like, somebody asked me recently about how I got to where I am. So I'm very lucky in that I have a position where I'm this endowed chair position, and I'm thinking, how did I ever end up in this position? Because I never had the desire to be in this position. And it's all just these little series of happy accidents. It got from A to B to C to D, and I'd love, because that's the way science is, and that's the way evolution is. Evolution is not a direct; it's a happy accidents to kind of reach you from A to B and C and D, and I love that whole process. I think it's really cool.
It's funny you put it that way. That was the story of my PhD. So like, I got on this project, and it was supposed to be the sepsis project, and then things were going kind of weird, and so they were like, well, we also have this wound healing project, hop on it, right? And I'm working this project for a year. And the whole hypothesis is that these mice are going to heal faster. And it's just not working, right? And it's just not working. And my qualifying exam is coming up, and I'm supposed to be presenting this project that I'm going to be pitching to do for my PhD on. And I'm like, I talked to my PI, I'm like, I got nothing. And he's like, well, you got to figure something out, Patrick. And I'm like, all right, man, I'm just going to let these wounds heal, and then we're just going to section them and pray to the gods that something's happening in there we don't see. And it turns out the mice and this whole pathway I found, it doesn't heal faster, but the wounds mature faster once they're closed.
Mm.
And it's just that happy accident of like, we never even thought that was the way that was going to happen, and it turns out that has far better implications even than healing faster, because now that applies to like chronic wounds as well, and like skipping.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah,
because then you can work out why and how. That's
exactly.
kind of
You're like,
cool.
okay,
Yeah,
it doesn't close faster, but now it's maturing faster. Explain.
it's not as much fun when you're a grad student thinking, "Fuck, how am I gonna get to the next
buddy,
point?"
let me tell you, it was not fun until about a week before qualifying exams when I had that.
Yeah.
I got the sections back and I looked at the slides and I'm like, oh, buddy, that's a lot of fibroblasts, and they are doing a lot of work.
Yeah, that's cool.
Very different.
Yeah, I had a very easy academic life. I did my PhD
gross.
and it was awesome. I moved to the US and I did 2 postdocs and they were awesome.
Oh,
And I moved into a faculty position. It was awesome. And then I moved to tech 2.5 years ago and it's awesome.
yeah.
I don't think I've ever had that real shit moment, where it's like, I've had it when selling a house or whatever, but never with my job. I've always had these kind of like nice little smooth transitions from one to the other. I loved being a PhD student. I loved being a postdoc, and I loved being a faculty member, and I totally love where I am now here at Virginia Tech. It's just awesome, So I've never had that scary, and I try to guide my students, especially my grad students, about these scary events, but there's always ways around them, and they always lead to better things.
I think that's a good just mantra in life, right? Is like sometimes we get stressed and we fret and we worry and we don't spend enough time just being like, okay, the moment's here and we can't work around the moment that's here, but how do we figure out how to move forward in the least painful way possible, right?
But also you got to realize that people react differently to stress. Some people work really well under stress.
Yeah.
And some people don't work well under stress at all,
Sure.
And of course that can change on the situations, so that means that the mentoring every individual is totally different. It's got to be an individual based, but I still look back and think, God, I was really lucky. I had a really easy path to get to where I am. I think it was easy. It probably at the time was pretty stressing out, but but
looking back, it's fine now. So that must be great.
That's right. Yeah, right. I have more stress thinking about my snake breeding every year, about what works and what doesn't work, than what I had with my academic life, which is kind of funny.
That is funny. I ironically, I now work with my grad school PI. He was a terrible PI in grad school.
Right.
He was not a good mentor, and he opened.
Is he still terrible?
He's a fantastic boss, and it's very different, right? There's a difference between a mentor and a boss.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Exactly, and so like when I was in grad school, I mean, it was not there was lots of stress and lots of he's very, he's a very, very, very well-funded individual, very data-driven. As long as the results are coming, he doesn't care what's going on, right? But if you're not giving like copious amounts of results every other day, issues arise, right? And
right.
Once you start kind of figuring stuff out as a grad student, you get into your last year and you're actually being productive, things change, right? And then now that I'm well out of grad school and I am a productive human, it's very different, right? It's very,
allegedly a
productive human. It's very different. So yeah, I think even the scenario and the situation that you're in life and who you work with and work for can have a dramatic effect on how everything is handled too.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, as I say, like I'm so lucky to be able to tie in my hobby and my job, which I love, and the fact that I can turn around and if someone messages me, like I'm doing work with Nick Mutton and Ryan Young now on Scrub Python evolution, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been going on for a couple of years. COVID delayed it and stuff, but we're into some really cool work now. I'm doing this other work with other people, with the Boa genome and the Carpet Python genome, but it's all based on. I wouldn't be doing that if I wasn't into this hobby. I'd be working on, rodents or cockroaches or whatever else that I work on, but the snake stuff through my hobby has driven me to do that, and it's allowed me to do that.
That's awesome. Yeah. What are the most effective quarantine or biosecurity steps you think small-scale breeders often overlook?
Switching gloves.
Yeah, well, dude, that's a big one. Switching gloves.
Yeah.
Also, like when they quarantine, I don't think most people properly quarantine.
No. One thing I heard people like sometimes wash to save a little bit of money. Wash their plastic water bowl, like the deli cups. Wash the delis and reuse them. And I'm just like, no, it's
just,
worth the money just to throw them away. Use a fresh deli.
Well, so
uh-oh.
I would argue that to one extent, if it's
Okay.
being used in the same animal.
Yeah, from
So
the
if you
people
can
that have
wash
reached
it-
out asking us, they're just like
They're washing
pulling them all,
spreading around.
washing
No,
them,
no,
and then
yeah.
just
Yeah,
going
no,
back,
no.
right? And we're just like, nope, don't do
If it's
it.
the same, if it's done over like a week or two, that's fine. If it's done over months, then that's terrible.
Yeah,
Don't do
I understand if you have like maybe 4 or 5 animals, and you just wash
That's like having your coffee cup or teacup and just rinsing it in water and then drinking again.
Yes.
You're gonna have some really nasty scum, you know.
There are a shocking amount of scientists that do that. Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's just disgusting.
But yeah, you're entirely right there. And also, I think the other one is people using the same feeding tongs.
Yes.
To feed across animals.
Yeah.
Quarantine really is something that should be long term. Like the way I do quarantine is 6 to 12 months, depending on the system. You're right, and sometimes longer, especially with emerald tree boas, it's longer. But it means separate feeding tongs. It means separate water bowl. It means separate everything, and even to the point where I only go to the quarantine stuff on one day and then everything else the other day because I fear, I fear spread.
Yeah.
And because we don't know, and I mentioned earlier on about forest flies. You see these little flies here and there. They are probably really good vectors of diseases between your snakes.
For sure.
And all they need to do is because they lay their eggs often in water. So you'll find them in water bowls. You pick it up and then you find them across the room in another. And they're there as well. So they're likely transmitting across rooms.
Thank you, Warren, for a whole nother just nightmare.
The anxiety level for Patrick.
Oh my God, just went through the.
So therefore, get those little what are they called? Catchies? Is that what they called? You get them off Amazon for like $25.
Yeah.
Put a bunch of those in your room.
Yeah. And
they'll catch it. You'll catch more of those forest flies than you ever thought existed on the planet. And it will change the way that whole system works.
My whole ceiling's just gonna be one giant bug zapper.
Life was easy before I started working on insects, dude.
Oh,
and then I started working on them. I was like, fucking hell, they're everywhere, So.
So for me, a couple of different things. One, for like when I bring in a new animal to the collection, so I quarantine in my home separate from the facility. And then I actually have like multiple rooms, like it's like a stair stepper, right? So the first month they're in like the very back bedroom that no one ever sees, and the snakes are mildly neglected, right? And then you move to the next section, and then the next section, and then finally they make it into the facility, but in like the very last rack that gets touched only on a specific day and never interacted with, and it stays there for however long, right? It could be 6 months, whatever. If we're talking about like just the normal collection, like Chase brought up changing gloves. So I basically, we clean a whole rack and then we change gloves.
Yep, that's what I do.
We change gloves between racks. When we're changing, basically any gloves are not used between two racks. It doesn't matter whether it's water, feeding, cleaning. They're just not used.
So are these racks side by side?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the rationale with gloves if the racks are touching? What's the rationale?
Well, if you're spot cleaning and you're getting fecal matter on your hands, it's all, if you're just spot cleaning, it's all sectioned off to one rack. You're not just going to keep going down the line.
But what I'm saying is if the racks are side by side, so what stops any kind of potential? So I'm just trying to think. I'm thinking about how disease spreads. Right? So if the racks are a foot apart, right, it limits. But if the racks are side by side touching. There's always the potential.
There's always potential. I think when I think about,
I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Oh no,
I'm
no,
not trying to say it because I do the exact same thing, Chase. So
yeah, when I think of biosecurity, I know that we're not going to eliminate everything, right? You can't.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so in my mind, like, yeah, you're right. Like bugs can go across, maybe airflow, things like that. But if I can limit as much as possible, and fecal is definitely a transmission for disease, like I can at least attempt to limit that. Or for me with the water dishes, water is a great vector.
Mm-hmm.
So if we use the gloves between each rack, it's just that interaction between the racks. You're right. It's not going to solve everything. We got fucking flies flying across apparently my racks. Thanks for that.
I think the biggest thing is you bring new animals in, you quarantine them.
Yeah.
You bring animals to a show, you quarantine them.
Yeah.
Right? So you can do stuff for ectoparasites. When you're at a show, be really careful about if people handle your animals. Other than that, there's not a lot we can do. It's like,
I'm just going to set my whole building on fire. This
well,
conversation.
that's exactly it, right? It gets a little bit too scary. And as I say, I've been keeping snakes for 30 something years, and I've never had anything crazy happen. Right? I think the last time we got snake mites was like 20 years ago, 19 years ago. And, but I was able to control it and monitor it and so on. And now through careful quarantine, everything's been great since then, and I've never tested a snake for nido. I've never tested a snake for adenovirus or whatever. If an animal did pop up and say, right, this is kind of weird, I would do that, but I haven't needed to. Just be careful who you buy from and how you don't bring your animal in. Like, I see all these YouTube videos of people opening up these new boxes in their snake room.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm like, but their answer is, "Oh, but it came from a friend."
Don't care.
Yeah.
That means nothing. You got to be just treat it like it has the worst virus ever, and keep it aside. And you know what? In 6 months' time, you'll be much happier. But sadly, many people buy them and they instantly bring them into the collection because they want to breed them that month.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem for a lot of this hobby has come from. It's got to be that instant gratification instead of saying, I'm bringing it in and I'm going to wait 6 months for quarantine and then we'll bring it into their breeding program. It's that instant, got to get it to stay on top of the game. And I think that's where a lot of problems happen for people, with collections.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and we even have a separate holding tub for every single rack for our biosecurity. So everything is kind of like if someone's taking a tub out to full clean it, so the snake just doesn't stay on the cart and just wander off.
Yeah.
We'll put it in the tub to hang out, but every rack has its own tub. So we make sure fresh water bowls, fresh gloves,
and Chase, because you guys have got such an important facility.
Yeah,
you can't mess around with this. Like, a simple mistake could mean mites spread. Can you imagine treating mites in your collection?
Oh
no, and that sounds horrific.
An RI in your collection. Can you imagine? All that stuff that easily is spread.
Dude, I had that conversation the other day because somebody was like, Patrick, it's okay. It's been a couple of weeks. Bring the hatchlings back in the collection. I'm like, there's 1,200 snakes in there. I can't.
No.
1,200
Think
snakes?
about mites. Mites are parthenogenetic.
Stop.
You think about our snakes being parthenogenetic. Mites. All you need is one female. You just need one female.
No, you only need
one.
The
worst thing about them is they can spread through static.
Dude.
So that guy walking around the snake show with the reptile show with that boa around his neck that's got a couple of mites on it, and all it needs is static, depending on the air where you are, and one jumps over into you or whatever. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. And within a month you will have. So with bed bugs, within 6 months with bed bugs, we can have 64,000 bed bugs being produced from a single pregnant female.
Ugh.
So that's probably equivalent to what a mite can produce.
Honestly, that was probably the worst part when I worked in the ER was when we'd have those patients come in and we had to quarantine them because of active bed bugs.
Yeah.
Hated it.
Yeah.
They made us take off. They made us take off like all our clothes and switch clothes, shower, put them in the oven in the hospital.
Think about how I feel as a scientist, and that's what I work on.
Yeah,
I always thought, how can it get worse? I worked on cockroaches, and then I worked on mice, and then cockroaches, and then bed bugs. I was like, what nice genital lice! Like, come on, you need to get a better system. Turns out bed bugs are really interesting scientifically, but yeah, I can imagine that, Chase. They're just but snake mites can do the exact same thing.
No,
which is just terrible.
Okay, so let me ask you from that standpoint then, as we're talking about biosecurity, right? And we'll use the example of bringing snakes back from an expo, right? So you put them in quarantine. Do you think it's better to just go ahead and treat everything as if they have mites straight.
Yes.
Or
preempt. Yeah.
Yeah. Just yes. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's wise to preempt. So what I've done. So as I say, I've been breeding snakes for 30 something years, but I've only ever done two snake shows, two reptile shows, one in Atlanta and one that was in the summer, and one last weekend in Virginia. And I will say the one last week I was probably more likely to introduce mites than the one in Atlanta.
Okay.
It was, and that's fine. It's just the way it goes. But what I did was when I brought my animals back, in the box that I brought them all back in, I put in a treatment,
Mhm.
and they were set aside, and they were put into a separate room for a week, and they were treated, and they were all on paper, and I could monitor to see if there's any little spots appearing here and there.
Yeah.
And then after a week, you should see adult mites by then. And if you don't see adult mites, then you're pretty safe, especially in water bowls or on white paper.
So that's what I was going to ask you then. So
yeah.
So if you don't, so we'll just use my example so I can sleep better at some point this year. So bring them back. I treated 95% of them, right? But it's been like 3 weeks, 2 weeks.
Oh, you're fine. You should be fine.
If you don't see mites at that point, based on the exponential growth we see, you would see with them.
Especially in water bowls. Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna sleep even though, as Charlie said, we need to take a rubbing alcohol bath now and burn everything to the ground. I do feel a little bit better about what's in that room.
Yeah. No, I think also we're a little bit too scared of what could happen.
Not possible.
Because I think it's important because we know if it did happen, it's going to be terrible.
Yeah.
It's not like having one or two snakes. Can you imagine
Ward,
bringing in mites into that had 10 or
mites,
12 or 15 or 100 snakes?
I'm setting the building
It's
on fire.
scary. It literally is not fun. Yeah.
No. I don't know how you, like, people with larger collections, I don't know how you realistically recover from mites. Like, realistically.
I spoke to a woman at the show on Sunday in West Virginia, and she said that she lost her collection because they lived in an old house and they could not eradicate mites despite what they treated with, because the mites are getting out of the enclosure. And it's a wooden build, it's a wooden structure, it's wooden walls, it's this and that, and it was just mites everywhere.
Ooh,
it took me a while to think about how the dynamics of that, and I thought, yeah, well, that's very easy because mites spread very easily, and all they need to do is get out of their enclosure, depending on what they keep them in, and breed on the walls, on the wooden slats or the wooden, the shiplap or whatever they got, and I just thought that would be devastating. It'd just be awful,
Wow.
Like I still, having not had mites in my collection for nearly 20 years, I still go into it and I see, like, on the white paper for the babies, and I see like a little black dot, and I instantly pull it over to my microscope, and I'm like, oh no, it's a piece of feces, it's fine. But I still do that. Every time I'm like, hold on, and you breathe on it, because with a mite, if you breathe on it, it'll move.
Yeah.
And but it freaks me out still, and it should.
Well,
yeah,
it should, because
there was I forget what I was reading one time, but they were talking about mites and how they will just aimlessly wander at times, and they're actually shockingly fast for their size.
Yes,
and so like you just talked about, this mite that was like, you know what, I don't feel like eating a snake today. I'm going to go wander to the other side of this room. It's
right. Just sit here.
Just
gonna relax.
Hang out there.
2 years.
For as long as it lives, producing a good. Anyway, I just said it all.
Yeah. So we're about to start some work on snake mites in my lab, and we're going to work on insecticide resistance, because they're starting to show resistance to pyrethroids, and pyrethroids are what the prevent a mite, nicks, all that kind of stuff is based around. So we've got colonies that we're starting in one of my labs, one of my animal labs, which scares the crap.
I was going to say that's
right.
bold. Look at you playing with fire.
Not just bed bugs and cockroaches, but freaking snake mites.
Yeah, you're invited.
We raise them on blood, so they're raised on rabbit blood, but to start understanding insecticide resistance, because we're hearing more and more stories about about people getting snake mites, and they're trying to use a pyrethroid-based insecticide, such as Preventamide or such as Nix or all that kind of stuff, but it's not working.
Yeah.
And very, very likely is that they're developing resistance. Where there's two ways to develop resistance. One is through metabolic processes, which causes the upregulation of genes. It turns on, basically they make enzymes that break down the insecticide. But once they get into the snake body, these enzymes break down the insecticide. And whenever these mites or insects are exposed to this insecticide in a concentration that's just not enough to kill them, they can turn these on, and therefore they're upregulated. And therefore, anytime they're introduced to this insecticide, they break it down, so that therefore you can't kill them. The other thing they can do is they can actually cause their cuticle, their skin, to thicken, and therefore it takes longer for the insecticide to get past that barrier, right? And then the third mechanism is they can evolve mutations in their genome, which means that it just screws up, right? So the way these insecticides work is, we all have nerve cells, and the nerve cells are driven by channels, and the channels, we can look at the genome of the channels, and you can find a little mutation, and it causes the channel to go from that to that. The channel still works, but the insecticide no longer binds to it. And therefore, or it does bind to it, depending. You can change the function of the channel. So these things are just remarkable, how these insects can evolve these different mechanisms to evade insecticide control. And it only takes, for what we find, it takes about 3 years, 4 years of exposure, and then they're ready to go for the next run, which is why companies do so well with insecticide control, because it's this constant uphill battle. We developed a new system, they've evolved resistance. They've evolved this new system or developed a new mechanism, they've evolved resistance. We call it the Red Queen hypothesis. It's this constant running to catch up.
Yeah.
You do this, we do that. You do this, we do that. And so you look at the bed bugs or the cockroaches or the snake mites of today, and they're not just resistant to this insecticide, but also that one and this one and this one, because they've evolved all of these strategies. It's kind of scary, but it's really evolutionary. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, it's the evolutionary arms race, man. It
just sucks whenever you own a collection of snakes and you're like, oh yeah, this is.
Yeah. And we're back to setting my building on fire. Ashley asks, what products do you use for prevention and treatment? So I still have a couple of bottles of the Frontline spray.
I was getting to say that. That's what whenever an animal comes into the facility.
Yeah, but I have 2 bottles left, and that stuff's not being made anymore. So
yeah, and that's also fipronil based, right?
Yeah, fipronil.
Yeah, it's a GABA receptor, so it's different. So the nice thing about fipronil, it affects a different nerve channel than pyrethroids. So Preventamide. So it's a totally different mechanism. So you could have snake mites that are resistant to pyrethroids, which is probably really common, but they're not resistant to fipronil. Fipronil is a phenylpyrazole insecticide, and it's a totally different mechanism of action. So, but also I will tell you, the fipronil is actually coming off register, so you'll be able to get it more active, more easily, generally, in the next probably year or two. Yeah.
No.
Oh, that's exciting. That's good. So with like fipronil, when so like we'll get a snake and and we'll treat it the first week that we get it, and then we treat it a couple weeks later, and then maybe 2 weeks after that or whatever. I know in dogs and cats, because of how Frontline works, right, it sticks around for a month, give or take, because sweat glands and all that good stuff.
Right.
Do you think, like, when people treat a snake with, we'll use the Frontline spray as the example, is it really necessary to treat it multiple times that month, or like do you feel like you do?
I think every shed is fine.
Every shed, you think that the fipronil will stick around more?
I think the oils, I think the extracts are probably sticking around on the snake. But what we've shown recently with bed bugs, which is kind of crazy, is that they're showing mutations and metabolic resistance to fipronil. And yet bed bugs have never been treated with fipronil.
Oh, good.
Oh, wow.
So they're probably getting it from people that co-sleep with their pets, their dog or cat, that have been treated with fipronil. And they're getting the secondary effects. So therefore,
This is why I hate science.
All right, my mouse isn't allowed to sleep in bed now,
The people that have their snake beside their bed, in the cage, in the enclosure, there's the potential that if they ever get snake mites, because those insects will not be subjected to the full level of the insecticide. They get it, but they're not getting the full level to kill them. And that causes these upregulation of enzymes, and it's a scary process. We're studying that heavily in my lab because we're trying to understand what it takes to go from zero to resistant, and how quickly that can happen. The other scary thing is, and I hate to say this now, is that once they get it, right, it's an upregulation of the gene. It's called an epigenetic process. Once they're moved away from that stressor, those genes just turn off and they go back to normal.
Absolutely not.
What we're finding with many of these pest insects is they don't go back to normal. They just stay up there.
Of course they do. Of course.
Right. And they stay there for many, many, many generations, dozens of years.
This is like Spider-Man getting bit by a radioactive spider and just be.
Oh, it is. It's totally it. Yeah, it's exactly. It's freaking aliens. It's everything. It's just the worst nightmare.
I've never used.
This is the movie Contagion within a podcast, right?
Yeah.
It is, and we're starting to bring snake mites into this. So what I would love to get, and again, I hate asking this, but any people that have snake mites that they would find really hard to treat, if you can collect some and send them to me, we'll start raising them in the lab, because we would love to start actually studying these.
That is a first-time request that I never thought I'd hear. That was not on my bingo card for 2025, but
I will
not only shed test, we're sending in snake mites now, guys.
Yeah. So we want to advance this hobby, but it goes further for the hobby. Yeah.
It's amazing.
And it means that my biosecurity has to ramp up way higher.
Yeah.
Because not just am I doing this at work, I bring my work home.
Yeah,
so.
You're gonna have to shower at the lab now, and
about 4 times, before I do.
Dude, at least.
Yeah.
Oh, you're very brave. I worked in a lab for a hot second doing Lyme disease research, and we had ticks in the lab.
Ooh.
We do that as well.
Yeah, I remember feeling dirty every day coming home. I'm like, well,
we do ticks, we do Lyme, we do Babesia, we do all this stuff. Yeah, think about all the shitty things. I could be working on condors or something cool, but now I decided to work on pest insects, which is great.
Seven Dust. I've never used Seven Dust. I don't know.
So I'm assuming Seven Dust is one of the general dust that's used for insects. So how these dusts work is they basically they're ultra fine. They're almost glass fiber. They destroy the exoskeleton of the insect and cause them to desiccate. The problem with many of these dusts is they put them down where you can see it. It's like what's it called? It's any of the dusts that they put down. Diatomaceous earth, for example.
Yeah, I was about to say, is it like diatomaceous earth? Yeah.
If you can see it when you put it down, it's too thick and it won't kill the insect. They'll actually actively avoid it. In enclosures, it's not going to work because you've got humidity, you've got temperature, you've got substrate, you got all. In your home, it's fine, right? So diatomaceous earth, you can put around the bed legs, the bed frame legs, whatever, around the outskirts of your room, and that will kill indoor pest insects. With mites, I don't think it's going to work because you got so many things in your enclosure. I don't think it's going to work. But they work by shattering. They basically shatter the exoskeleton of the insect that causes them to desiccate and it kills them.
Well, they deserve it because
they take away happiness.
I'm not saying they don't. I just think it's going to be hard to deal with. Yeah.
Oh my god. All right, Warren, it is almost midnight, and you have given us so much time, and honestly...
Nightmares, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the nightmares for everybody, yeah.
But honestly, this has been one of my favorite talks, because it's definitely the nerdiest we've gotten. And
we want you back, if you're willing to come back, because this was fantastic.
This was fantastic.
I apologize for not being last week. I picked up a bug last week, and it kind of knocked me out. But I apologize, So.
We actually ended up having Chris Eaton on. And I
brought him up. Chris is a great guy. I love Chris.
Chris is the best. I was like, Chris, Warren was going to talk about Partho. How do you feel about giving the lecture? And he's like, I'm ready. I was like, okay.
I'll have to go and watch that one. That's great. I love Chris. He's such a great guy. That's really cool. Anytime hit me up. I'm always happy to chat. So
yeah, but I appreciate it.
Awesome.
What is the best way for people to reach out to you, Warren, either with sheds or
snake mites or whatever you need?
Yeah, the easiest way is through email. Well, the easiest way through email through my lab email, which is just warrenbooth@vt.edu, so virginiatech.edu
Okay,
as an education.
great.
You can find me on Instagram on Boa Booth, which is my kind of snake breeding, kind of snake hobby stuff. And then on Facebook, I don't really do it much, but Warren Booth on. If you see my face, then it's I'm like there on a picture with statue of Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy. So it's you can get me on that there, but I don't really friend people much, but unless I know them, I've chatted to them. But any of those, but also just look up Warren Booth at Virginia Tech. You'll find me. You know, I'm really always happy to work with people. So
Perfect. I love it.
Very awesome.
yeah.
We're gonna end in just a second. If you'll stick around, I'll talk to you
Sure.
backstage. Chase, how can people get a hold of you?
JKRMGR on Instagram and Canova everywhere else. Patrick?
Yep, guys, Aura Reptiles everywhere. I need the attention. Please go like, subscribe. We will see y'all next week. I don't know if we'll have a guest or maybe it'll be Chase and I. Who knows? We'll find out. But once again, thank you everyone for hanging out with us. All the great questions. We love y'all. And we'll see you next week. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.